At 1437, on August 19, 1944, Colonel Hans von Lux stood on a hill near Falaise and watched as 50,000 German soldiers were trapped in a 15 kilometers wide corridor. 42 years old, a tank commander with 4 years of frontline experience, he had zero solutions for the problem that 100,000 Allied soldiers were currently encircling the entire 7th Army. The Allies had established the perfect pincer attack. American troops from the south, British and Canadian from the north. Only a narrow passage near Falaise remained open, and every hour it grew smaller. German tanks, trucks, artillery, everything was jammed onto a few roads. They were perfect targets for Allied fighter bombers. The Luftwaffe practically no longer existed. Allied P-47s and Typhoons controlled the skies, circling like vultures, waiting for targets. Every movement on the roads meant death. German columns were being systematically destroyed. Burning vehicles blocked the paths. Dead horses and destroyed tanks were everywhere. Von Lux had 3 impossible options. First, break out to the east through the narrowing corridor. The problem: moving 50,000 men with heavy weapons through a 5 kilometers wide passage under constant artillery fire and air attacks. Mathematically impossible. Second, hold position and wait for relief. The problem: no relief was coming. The Wehrmacht had no reserves left. Third, surrender. German soldiers into captivity. The entire 7th Army wiped out. If this story grips you, hit the like button now. It shows YouTube that such forgotten stories should reach more people. Von Lux was no ordinary officer. Born in 1911 in Flensburg, a cadet at 18, a tank officer. At 22, he had fought in Poland, France, Russia, and Africa under Rommel. 48 months of frontline service, surviving 127 tank engagements. He understood something about warfare that most officers never learned. Rules are suggestions, not laws. German military doctrine was crystal clear: when encircled, maintain formation, defend your position, wait for orders. Order over chaos, discipline over initiative. That had worked in Poland, in France, and in the first months in Russia. But now, in August 1944, with Allied troops 20 kilometers away and 300 fighter bombers in the sky, doctrine was a death sentence. On August 17th, von Lux had received an order from Field Marshal Model: hold position. Retreats only on express orders. Standard military language for die here, but do it neatly. Model was 200 kilometers away at his headquarters. He had no idea what the situation actually looked like. He hadn't seen the P-47s turning German columns into burning wreckage. Von Lux understood something that came from his childhood in Schleswig-Holstein. His father had been a forester, managing 4,000 hectares of forest. His father had taught him how to hunt deer, not by chasing them deer faster, have better endurance, and know the terrain. You hunt deer by prediction. You find the Wechsel, the trails and paths the game must take. Then you wait there. The Allies were hunting the 7th Army exactly like that. They had blocked the Wechsel. Every road, every bridge, every passage was either destroyed or under fire. German troops were forced to take predictable routes, and that is where the Allied artillery and fighter bombers waited. Von Lux recognized the pattern on August 18th at 6:23. He watched through his binoculars as a German tank column tried to move through Trun. 14 Panzer IVs, 8 half-tracks, maybe 200 men. They followed the main road. Standard doctrine: maintain formation, stay on paved roads, minimize ground pressure on farmland. 6 P-47 Thunderbolts appeared from 3,000 meters. A dive, a rocket attack. The first volley destroyed the leading 3 tanks. The column stopped. The tanks couldn't move forward or backward because of the burning wrecks. The P-47s circled and attacked again. Minutes later, 14 destroyed tanks, maybe 80 dead soldiers. The rest ran into the fields, leaving their equipment behind. Von Luck understood. Doctrine was killing his men. Predictability was killing his men. If he wanted to get 50,000 soldiers out of this pocket, he had to do the opposite of doctrine. He had to become unpredictable. He had to change the paths. That night, August 18th, at 23:17, Von Luck gathered his company commander's 12 officers in a bombed-out farmhouse. Maps on the table, a kerosene lamp, the sound of distant artillery outside. Von Luck explained his plan. Plan was the wrong word. It was madness disguised as tactics. First, no more main roads. Only dirt tracks, forest paths, farm lanes. Slower, more difficult, but unpredictable. Second, no movement during the day. Move only at night. During the day, hide completely. No visible vehicles, no smoke, no movement. Third, small groups. No columns of 200 vehicles. A maximum of 10. Vehicles per group, with a 500-meter distance between them. If one group is discovered, one group does not the whole column. His company commander stared at him. Major Ernst Hoffmann, with 15 years of service, spoke what everyone was thinking. Colonel, this violates every regulation. Model has ordered us to maintain formation. If we split up, we lose command control. If we drive through dirt tracks at night, we'll lose tanks in ditches. If we are caught off the main routes, we'll be considered deserters. Von Luck looked at each officer individually. Then he said 3 sentences that changed everything. Model is 200 kilometers away. I am here. My regulation is survival. The officers were silent. Then Hoffmann nodded. One by one, they all nodded. They understood. Rules meant death. Von Luck's madness was their only chance. On August 19th, at 2 o'clock, the dissolution of the formation began. 6,500 men, 28 tanks, 78 trucks, 12 artillery pieces. Von Luck divided them into 47 separate groups. Each group received its own route. No 2 groups took the same path. Maps were distributed. The rendezvous, 48 hours later, 60 kilometers to the east near Vermetiers. The first group left the position at 2:17, 3 Panzer IVs, 2 trucks, 40 men. They didn't drive east on the main road. They drove southwest, away from the Allied lines, through a forest that no military map showed. The group leader was Lieutenant Karl Weber, 23 years old, from Bavaria. He had studied forestry before the war. He understood trees, soil conditions, and how to find paths where none existed. Weber led his group through 8 kilometers of forest. No road, only logging trails. Slow, maybe 8 kilometers per hour. The tanks had to maneuver around trees. Twice, trucks got stuck in soft forest soil. The men pushed them free. After 4 hours, they reached a dirt track south of Truneggs. Expected no German troops. This story saves forgotten heroes from oblivion. Subscribe now and hit the bell so you don't miss any of these extraordinary reports. Weber waited until dawn, 5:47. Then he moved his group further, always south, parallel to the expected German route but 3 kilometers away. Allied fighter bombers patrolled the main roads, dropping bombs on the traffic jams at Troon and Chambois. Weber's group was invisible. At 11:23, Weber hid his tanks in a barn and the trucks under trees, camouflaged with branches. His men slept in a nearby orchard. No movement, no smoke, no tracks. Allied reconnaissance planes flew directly over them and saw nothing at nightfall. 20:34, Weber continued the movement, now heading east, but on field paths, not main roads. His tanks drove through wheat fields, leaving tracks in the grain, but at night these tracks were invisible. On August 20th, at 3:15, Weber's group reached a river. The bridge had been destroyed by Allied airstrikes 3 days prior. Doctrine said, "Wait for engineers, repair the bridge, then cross." Weber ignored doctrine. He found a ford 800 meters upstream. Water depth, 1.2 meters. The Panzer IVs could handle its sealed hulls. Underwater driving capability up to 1.3 meters. One tank after another crossed the river slowly and carefully. The water reached the upper rollers. The engines roared, but they made it. All 3 tanks, both trucks. 40 men on the other side. 0 Allied detection. On August 21, at 14 o'clock, Weber's group reached the meeting point at Vimetiers. 60 kilometers in 36 hours through enemy territory without air cover or artillery support. They were the first group to arrive. Weber reported to von Luck. 0 losses, all vehicles intact, all men ready for combat. Over the next 72 hours, 41 of the 47 groups reached the meeting point. 5,300 men, 22 tanks, 61 trucks. 6 groups were destroyed en route lead patrols or airstrikes, but that was an 87% success rate. Compared to the main columns on the main roads, where 90% of the vehicles were destroyed, von Luck had saved 5,300 German soldiers from the Falaise pocket, not by following orders, but by ignoring them, not by holding formation, but by dissolving it, not by fighting, but by becoming invisible. The military reality was brutal. In the Battle of Falaise, the Wehrmacht lost 50,000 soldiers, captured, 10,000 killed, 344 tanks destroyed, and 2,447 other vehicles obliterated. But von Luck's 21st Panzer Division survived with 82% of its personnel, the highest survival rate of any German unit in the pocket. The High Command of the Wehrmacht was never officially informed of von Luck's tactics. In his report he wrote, "Tactical withdrawal under enemy contact." He did not mention the dissolution of the formation. He did not mention ignoring Model's orders. He did not mention that he had replaced doctrine with forest trails. Field Marshal Model was never informed of the details. He only saw the numbers. 21st Panzer Division, 82% strength maintained, 28 tanks evacuated, and combat treaty. Model praised von Luck's tactical discipline. The irony was perfect. Allied intelligence later analyzed the Falaise pocket. British officers could not understand how so many German units had escaped. They had blocked every main road, destroyed every bridge, and closed every predictable escape route. Their analysis from September 1944 stated, enemy units utilized unmapped routes and displayed unusual movement patterns inconsistent with standard military doctrine. That was exactly what had happened. The Germans had become unpredictable. They had stopped behaving like an army and started behaving like hunters, or like prey that knows the hunters are guarding the main trails. Von Luck continued to serve until the end of the war, fighting in the Ardennes, on the Rhine, and finally in Bavaria. He was captured by American troops on May 8, 1945. He spent 2 years as a prisoner of war. He returned to Germany in 1947, worked as a commercial representative, married, had 3 children, and lived quietly in Hamburg. He died in 1997 at the age of 86. His family knew little about his wartime actions. He didn't talk about them. When his son asked in 1983 what he had done in the war, von Luck replied, "Tried to survive." Sometimes succeeded. Only after his death did military historians find von Luck's personal records, diaries, notes, and hand-drawn maps. In them, he described the Falaise operation, in detail how he had ignored orders, how he had split 6,500 men into 47 groups, and how he had replaced German military doctrine with Forrester's logic. An entry from August 23, 1944, explains his philosophy perfectly. Rules are for peacetime. In war, the one who survives is the one who breaks the rules before the rules kill him. The Allies never released official figures on the German troops that escaped from Falaise. Estimates vary between 20,000 and 40,000. Von Luck's 5,300 were a significant part of that number. These soldiers continued to fight, prolonging the war and defending Germany for another 9 months. Morally, it is complicated. Von Luck saved German soldiers who fought for a criminal regime. Those 5,300 men contributed to the extension of a war that killed millions. Von Luck's success was tactically brilliant. Strategically, it prolonged suffering. But on a tactical level, von Luck proved something important. Doctrine is not God. Orders are not absolute. If the rules are killing you, change the rules. If predictable tactics turn your men into burning tanks, become unpredictable. Modern militaries study Falaise, not just the Allied operation, but also the German escape tactics. The US Army analyzes how small units can maneuver through enemy territory. The Bundeswehr investigates decentralized command structures. Von Luck's innovation was not the tactics themselves, small units, night movements, unconventional routes, all of that existed before. His innovation was the willingness to ignore doctrine when doctrine failed, the willingness to break orders when orders meant suicide. This is not an encouragement of it is the recognition of reality. Rules are made by people who are not in combat. Doctrine is written by officers who are not being shot at. Orders come from generals who are 200 kilometers away. If this story touched you, leave a comment and let us know where you are watching from. Our viewers range from Berlin to Vienna, from military historians to veteran families. You are part of this community of remembrance. The soldier at the front knows things that no general can know. He sees things that are on no map, understands realities that are written in no manual. Sometimes The best tactic is to ignore the manual. Von Luck understood this not just because he was a genius, but because his father had taught him how to hunt deer, how to find the paths, and how to wait when waiting is right, and how to move when standing still means death. He applied Forrester's logic to tank warfare, and 5,300 German soldiers survived, because a colonel decided that survival was more important than obedience. This is the true story of Falaise, not the battle of encirclement itself, which every history student knows. The forgotten story is how a tank officer with knowledge of forestry saved thousands of soldiers by ignoring everything the military academy had taught him. Hans von Luck broke every order, ignored Model's instructions, split his formation, took routes that existed on no map, moved when doctrine said stop, and hid when doctrine said fight, and almost no one knows his name. There are no medals for disobedience, no monuments for men who break orders, no history books about officers who lie to their superiors. But you know his name now. You know now that in August 1944, a German colonel saved 5,300 soldiers by breaking every principle of military discipline. You know that sometimes the best tactic is to have no tactic, but rather adaptation, improvisation, and the willingness to change the rules when the rules are killing you. This is not a glorification of insubordination. It is the recognition of a tactical reality. In extreme situations, the flexible survive, the rigid die, the obedient burn, and the unpredictable escape. Hans von Luck was a forester who commanded tanks, and for 72 hours in August 1944, he was the most dangerous man in the Falaise pocket. Not because he was the best fighter, but because he understood that sometimes you don't have to fight. Sometimes you just have to become invisible and find a way that no one is guarding.